Hello, everyone, and welcome to this year's 1099 e-filing overview for Tax 1099. We're going to spend a few minutes and go through some new information relating to Tax 1099 and your filing season for 2019. We're going to discuss what's new with federal e-filing. We're going to look at state filing a little bit. Then we're going to dive into the dashboard changes in Tax 1099, very minimal, but something that's important, especially for accounting firms. And then we're going to look at the new forms that are available in Tax 1099 and run through a quick process for manual form creation as well as importing with Excel. And we will have some other videos to discuss importing with our other integration partners such as QuickBooks, Xero, Zoho, and so forth. On the good side here with the federal e-filing, there are minimal changes this year. The IRS is preparing for a big shift for next year. So for the 2020 tax season, the IRS is introducing a brand new form. It's actually a really old form, but they're going back to it, called the 1099 NEC for non-employee compensation. So they're going to be separating Box 7 out of the 1099 miscellaneous form. Again, that's for 2020, not for 2019, but I just want to make you aware of it. So in case you hear something about it or you see a headline about it, you're aware that it is for the 2020 season and not for the 2019 season. And just as a reminder, extensions are no longer automatic for W-2 and 1099 miscellaneous Box 7. That was something that was introduced last year, but I wanted to remind everyone about that because it was a pretty important change. So the big change is coming next year. So for the 2020 tax season, and again, just wanting to alert you that this is happening. You may see headlines about it, or you may read something about the 1099 NEC form, and that is because the IRS is moving that. If you recall, a couple of years ago, the IRS went through a process to change the due date for Box 7 to January 31st, and for W-2s to January 31st. Those are due January 31st, whether you paper file, whether you e-file, and they're also due to be mailed to the recipients or to be electronically delivered to the recipients as of that January 31st date. The reason the IRS did that was to adhere to the 2015 PATH Act, and that was in order to prevent some of the fraud that is going on with refunds. People are stealing folks' data and filing fraudulent tax refunds. Then when the actual taxpayer files their tax form, they are getting problems with having that rejected by the IRS because their identity has been stolen. So this has all been kind of wrapped into this motion to move the Box 7 and the W-2 filings into the earlier filing season. And in order to make that more streamlined on the IRS side, they're separating the Box 7 form out. Again, 2020, so don't panic. This is for next year, 2020, filing in January 2021, and we will be ready to have all of that at the appropriate time. Just making you aware of it because you will hear something about it. The automatic extensions I mentioned is something that was phased out last year. Prior to that, you could get an automatic extension for your Box 7 non-employee compensation and get that extra 30 days to do the filing, but that has gone away. There are still extensions available for other boxes on the miscellaneous form as well as other forms like the dividend or the interest form, but you can no longer use that automatic extension for Box 7 filing. State filing, same situation as last year as we move into more states needing to get information. We have seen some movement, especially on the 1099-K form, where states are requiring some additional information. We file for all of the states for W-2s as well as for 1099 miscellaneous forms. And we adhere to any of the guidelines that those states have. For the most part, states are filing through the combined federal state filing program still, but some states are requiring earlier filing or separate filing when they're because they're not getting the information as fast as they would like to from the combined federal state filing program. So Tax 1099 does take care of all of that for you. We make that available for all of the different states that require a state filing so that you don't have to do that. We automatically identify the requirements of those states as you go through the filing process. And we'll see that as we go through and we look at the actual software here in a moment. A few new things inside of Tax 1099. We've got some new forms. The 1099, excuse me, the 1097 BTC form, the 1099 OID, the 1042, which is a form that you can file as a summary form to the 1042S. We've been offering the 1042S for several years, and users have asked us to make the 1042 available, and so that is now available as well. And then for our enterprise users, we've got some additional forms that are valid for Puerto Rico. They have different forms as opposed to the 1099 and the W-2. They have their own versions that are labeled under 480. They also have a 941 PR for Puerto Rico form that we've made available this year. So some new forms that are out there on the platform available for this year. Also with the enterprise accounts, not only is the Puerto Rico forms available, but there are some other things that you get. Especially for accounting firms or larger filers, there's workflow and user management. You get separate logins and action tracking, and a package of 250 10 matches with additional 10 matches above that at half of the price. So better deal for the 10 matches if you're subscribing to Enterprise. So let's take a quick look around inside of Tax 1099. I mentioned the dashboard, minimal changes on the dashboard, but there is a couple of things here. So this is my dashboard. I'm logged in as an enterprise user. You won't notice a whole lot of difference for an enterprise user versus an essential or an eFile Plus user. One thing that you might see, I have a couple of different colors here that is submitted for review. So that's just part of the workflow process that's available for enterprise users. But the one thing that we did here this year is we introduced the ability for users to filter not only by the tax identification number or name of the payer, but also by the client ID. So again, something that applies more to accounting firms than anyone else. But just as an example, if I have a client who has a client ID in their payer listing, and they're in the Fayetteville location for my accounting firm, and I have FAY as part of that, that location code. I could search for that and bring up that client and just see the clients that are part of that, that grouping there. So something that, that is useful. And if I just search by another piece of that, 1, 2, 3, 4 happens to be in the client ID for this payer, and so I can see that there. And then, of course, the same things that have been available in the past. If I want to search by a name or a portion of the 10, then I can do that. I can filter by the various statuses here. I can look at different years. I can even go down to the level of a specific reference number if that's something that I wanted to do. So, for example, if I knew from an email that I wanted to look at this particular reference number, then I could look at that, and that one is waiting for me to resubmit because it was rejected by the IRS. I've got the option to do that here. So not many changes on the dashboard, just kind of a refresher on what is available out there under the dashboard. Those new forms that I mentioned are going to be under Forms and New Forms. If I go here, you'll see those forms, the 1099 OID, the 1097 BTC, the 480 forms, again, because I'm logged in as an enterprise user, I can see those forms. And then the 941 PR is down here as well. There's the 1042. So all those forms are here and available. Many of them are available as both manual and importable forms. So you'll find the import forms under the import section. We'll go there in just a moment. But just as a refresher for how to use the service, I'm going to go through the process to build a 1099 miscellaneous form. So if this is your first time logging onto the platform, you can build out a form going under that menu, Forms, New Forms, and then you can add your payer information. So all of my payer information I can simply fill in here. Here's that client ID that is a searchable field now on the dashboard, but all of that information can be filled in there for my payer. Once I've got that information there, I have a list of payers that are available. If I wanted to search for just a particular company that's named there, I can do that. If you're a small filer, you just have one business and you'll only have one listing there. But if you're an accounting firm, you might have hundreds or thousands of payers listed there. Once I've got it there, it's there for all time. So I can go in, I can pick that company, that payer that I want to file this form for. Same thing with recipients. If I need to add a recipient, I simply go through the process to do that addition of the recipient. One thing that I'll note here, business versus individual, you'll notice that the fields change somewhat. A business would be someone who has an EIN and a business name, so typically a corporation, possibly an LLC. An individual might be your sole proprietors or someone you just hired to do some work. They're going to file through their SSN, is on their W-9, and you have a first, middle, and last name option for them. In either scenario, whether it's an individual or a business, I have this attention to field. That's a doing business as name that you can use. So if you go back here to business, you can see the attention to field. So that lets you print on the PDF copy or on the mail copy that we send out for you a separate line that will say business name, and then this could be their doing business as name, or just someone's attention to name if that's what you need to have there. Same as with the payer list. Once I've created recipients, I have all of them listed here. And so I can pick any one of my recipients that I have listed here. I mentioned earlier that for state filing, we automatically populate information. And so you can see this person is in Colorado. Colorado participates in the combined federal state filing program. So I'm getting that listing here, and we'll see the income update as well. So for this person, I'm going to say I paid them $1,500 in rents. And so I added that information to box 1. You can see it updated on the state income box here as well. So I've got that information there. If I need to add anything else, I can. Otherwise, I can save and continue, and that will let me go in and file this form. So again, if you're a person who only has 1 or 2 forms, you might just be doing that. You can save and add a new 1099 miscellaneous, or bring this form back up for you to let you fill in another one for a second vendor and then a third vendor and so on. And then if I needed to do a different form, not a miscellaneous form, I've got the save and add new form button here as well. I'm just going to click save and continue. And this is going to take me out into my view, edit, submit forms page. And I'm going to come back to this in a minute because I want to do an import process as well, so you can see what that looks like. And then I'll talk about some of the different options that are available here on this select forms page. I'm going to skip over here under my import section. I click the import menu, and I'm going to do an Excel spreadsheet. But as I mentioned earlier, if you have accounts with Bill.com, QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, Xero, Zoho, Sage Intacct, Entrata, and FreshBooks, we do have integration methods that are available there for you. We're getting ready to add a couple more integration methods over here. BQE Core will be one that will be added over here, and a couple more that may come live before the end of the year. I'm going to do a spreadsheet because you can do a spreadsheet with any particular of these forms that are listed here. So as I mentioned, some of the forms that we've recently introduced, the 1099 OID, the 1097 BTC, those are here and available for you to import as well. I'm going to stick with the miscellaneous because that's what most of our users are doing. And so for demonstration purposes, I'll stick with the miscellaneous form. You can download our template in CSV or Excel format. That will look like this when you download it. Obviously, I've put data into this one, but you'll see what the fields are that are required in red there, and then anything that's available but not required is listed in the white field there. You can also click into the column, or the cell, I should say, and you can see what's required for that. So EIN or SSN or ITIN, the 9-digit payer taxpayer identification number, the name, so forth and so on. You can see that as you go across the template as you're entering your data. This is the template that I'm going to import. So I'm going to select this file. I'm selecting that file locally. I'll get 100% here, meaning it's ready for me to process. I do have the ability to do corrected filings. That usually doesn't come into play until later after the filing season's over. But because we do file for prior years, you could be doing corrected filings for 2018 or 2017 as you're going through a process, especially accounting firms. If you're working with a client who might have been out of compliance for a prior year, you may need to do corrected filings. I'm going to file these as regular filing, so I'm just going to click Next. This is my mapping page. So if you're using our template, all of these boxes will be in white because we've mapped everything successfully for you. If you're using a different template, you could be using an older template, or you could be using something that you made up yourself. You may have to go in and map some of these boxes. They would be highlighted in yellow when you needed to do any mapping. As I'm using the template, I don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to click Next. I have 3 different grades applied to my data. I have good data, I have missing, invalid, required data, and I have an error in the recipient data. So on this yellow one here, that's for my payer The company name is Class Act. So I've got something missing from my recipient data there. If I scroll down, I can see that this person is in red. Sam Fields is in red because he's missing something. You may have more than this. So I'm only doing 10 forms, but if you have a few hundred forms in this, it would be very difficult to scroll down and find the right one. So we built a filter here. I'm going to use this flag option. I'm going to choose the red and click filter, and I'm only going to see the ones that are going to cause me problems. I can fix this here. I'm going to put in his state. This will fix it for the form. It will fix it for the recipient record in Tax 1099. You would still want to go back and fix your original data. I'm going to cancel this for just a second so I can show you. You have an error list that's available here. If I download this error list, Sam Fields is going to be on it, and there's going to be a message there stating that his state is incorrect or his zip code is not matching with his state. And so you could use that to go back to your source data and fix that state on Sam Fields' record. But for timing purposes, you may be doing this at the end of the month of January and need to just get this done. And so I'm going to pick California. I'm going to click update, and you'll see that now no one appears in my list because I have it filtered for just the red options. I'm going to clear that filter, and now I'll see green dots all the way down. Other things you can do here, if you need to, you can edit the box category, you can edit the box value. Usually you've done this before you get to this point, but it is available in case that's something that you need to do for a particular individual form. All of mine are good. I'm going to pick them. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. Down at the bottom, you can see these total amounts. You can source this back to your data. You can say, yes, $8,509,096 is the total of my 10 different forms that I paid out this year. And so that is another check for you so that you can make sure your data is going in correctly. When I click next, I'm going to get a message saying that my 10 forms were uploaded successfully. So I've got those there. I'm going to click OK. As I scroll down, I'll see 11 because I actually used one of the same people here. Ann Gable, if you recall, I did her form manually when I did the different box. So I've imported a form for her as well here. I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to show you something that will pop up and happen here in just a moment. So my next step here is to select the forms that I want to process. I'm going to point out a few things here, like I mentioned, I would show you as we're going through. This black button is important. It allows you to schedule the e-file to the IRS. So currently we're scheduled for January 10th, 2020. The IRS shuts down in December for receiving the files, and then they open back up sometime in January. Right now the date is January 10th, but it sometimes changes, and we'll apply the date as applicable. That date that we're defaulting to, though, is the first date that the IRS will receive e-files from third parties like us. So they won't take any e-file prior to that for the year 2019. However, you can date these a little bit later. So I'm going to choose this button that says Schedule the IRS e-file. I'm going to choose the schedule date for non-Box 7. So my non-Box 7 forms are due on March the 31st. So Box 1, Box 2, Box 3, and so forth. Those don't have to go to the IRS until March the 31st. My Box 7, though, have to go by January 31st. So I'm going to set up these dates so that they are processing out on those delivery dates to the IRS. This does not impact if I choose mail, if I choose email. Those will go out as soon as possible. You can see nothing happened with my email because I don't have any email addresses there. But if I wanted to mail these, we're going to send those out as soon as we can so that the mail goes out to the recipient. What that does is it gives you time to receive information back from the recipient before the scheduled date goes to the IRS and actually notifies the IRS that Ann Gable had $5,000 in payments. So that's why that date is important. The scheduled date is important for you to work with so that you can give yourself a little bit more time so that you have the ability to come in and edit those forms as you might need to. Then you've got the US Postal Service mailing option. Again, the email option is available there if you do have email addresses. I don't, so it's not coming up. 10 matches a service we offer where we validate the taxpayer identification number and name. So you can see here, I can't see the taxpayer identification number. Just as a security measure, we default that to truncate. And then I can see it here if I check the view 10 option. So I do get a chance to see it there. State filing, we automatically did that. So I have one person in Pennsylvania, one person in Massachusetts. We're applying the rules of those states. You can deselect these if you don't want us to do that filing to the state of Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. But in general, if you want us to do that filing, we will identify them here and we'll send them along. If you remember when I did the form for Ann Gable, she was in Colorado. That's a combined federal state filing form. So nothing displays here in the state filing column because that happens automatically. The IRS is going to send that to that state regardless of anything else that I do. And then the other blue buttons that you have here, you can calculate how much I would owe to Tax 1099 based off of where I am in my filing tiers. I could download multiple PDFs. So as you can see over here, I can view a single PDF if I want to. If I click that button, it will take me out. It will show me what the PDF is going to look like for that particular recipient. I can do that for all of the recipients. I get an individual file for each one of the recipients there. I can also export this to Excel, so it gives me a chance to see what each one of those forms is like in an Excel format, and that's basically similar to the template that I imported. This sum all box amount just gives me the ability to see how much in each box I have, so I can see what those are adding up to, make sure that they match back to my, my numbers. And then I can also delete the selected forms if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is click Next. And I'm going to get the message about my schedule date being in the future, but we're going to go ahead and send out the email and mail. And then it's going to tell me I have duplicates. So if you remember, I did one for Ann Gable manually, this $1,500 form, and then I imported one for Ann Gable as well. Depending on your scenario, that could be fine. You could want to send Ann Gable 2 different forms. You could want to get rid of one of those forms, but this message just gives you the option. If I continue, if I click OK and continue, then I'm going to get 2 forms for Ann Gable. If I cancel, then I'm going to have the chance to come back here and delete her second form. Just going to click OK. It takes me to my checkout page. I can see what my total filing fees are. I have a prepaid account, so I would pay and submit to eFile. If you don't have prepayment options on here, then you would see a credit card form here, and you'd be able to fill out that credit card. I'm not going to file these. I've already filed some test forms, but once I do file them, I click Pay and Submit to eFile. Then once I've done that, my forms are going to live here under the Manage Forms page. So if I go to the Manage Forms page and I pull up a payer that has some fake forms in here for the year 2019, I can see all those forms there. It could be that later I need to send a new copy to the recipient. It could be that I need to edit that information. Maybe the amount was incorrect, and so I need to edit the form. If I do that, it's just going to pull me into the form view, and I can go in and I can edit any of the pieces of information that are on that form, hit save and continue, and then I get a new version of that form available. So I can go in and I can actually enter that information. Oh, and actually this is a good thing. So I can see that my my payer's state number is not correct. This is something that that I overrode in an earlier version of this. And so if I click in here, it tells me what the format should be for the state of Arkansas. So we've got the 2 different formats that that the state of Arkansas could be. And so I've got not enough numbers on this particular one here, it looks like. And so I saved to continue. It updated that form data. And so once you've updated the form data, you may need to do a reprint. We can send out a new version of the U.S. Postal Service. You can send it by email. You can view and print it yourself to send out to the recipient with those updates on it. But that's the advantage of having that schedule date pushed out into the future, is that I'm able to go in and send that or edit that form and make those modifications to the form. I have a lot of bulk buttons here, so I can download all the PDFs of a certain type. I can download them into multiple sections. I can export to Excel, lots of different things that you can do here. And if I just needed to search for one particular person, I can do that by typing in the person's name here in the search field. So again, just giving myself some options where I can go in and do some work on those particular forms. Now, once I've filed the forms, if I go back to the dashboard real quickly, I can look at any of the forms that are submitted. I can see that those are submitted. So these are the ones that were showing up there under the Class Act and Manage Forms. If I click View from here, it's going to take me back to the same page. So you have a couple of different ways to navigate around the system. You can always use the menu options. If you're on the dashboard, you can also use the dashboard buttons to get from place to place in the system. Once I've done filing, my filing history will be listed here. And so I can see the forms that I've filed. I can click here to view those forms. I can see payments that I've made as well. If I wanted to check the box, I can see how much I paid for each one of those forms. I've got report options here as well, especially for our accounting firms. The submission history report can be valuable if you're charging back to your clients, but there are a number of different forms, reports that are available here so that you can go in and view data that you've placed into the system. Our support information is here as well, and so that is available throughout the year as well as during the busy season. And that's going to end our presentation for this general overview for the 2019 season. Hope you found everything to be useful, and please do contact us through our chat or through our email, and let us know if you have any questions about using Tax 1099.